Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on which coast you're on. I am Jen Waldron, one of the co-founders of Augusta, and I am very excited to have you here today to talk about the subject of preparing your business for maximum value. And super excited about our guest speaker that we have today, Alex from Agenda Health. Um, so I'm just going to give everybody a minute to get logged in, and then I'll kind of go over the housekeeping stuff that you're familiar with from being on these webinars, and then I'm going to turn it over to Alex. And I'm just super excited to get to dig into this stuff because there's so much valuable information that Alex and Agenda Health have to share about how to optimize your business for value, basically. While everybody's getting settled in and getting their coffee or whatever beverage, just wanted to say if you're not familiar with Augusta, we have built a technology company from the ground up to solve caregiver recruiting challenges for home care agencies specifically. I like to joke that we don't do anything else with our lives besides caregiver recruiting for home care agencies, and it's really true. Um, our whole goal is that we make it really, really simple for HR people to spend their time with the right candidates, asking them the right questions, and uncovering whether or not candidates are going to be a good long-term fit for the organization. So that is why I'm so excited to dig into this subject today because so much of what I'm talking about, it aligns with what Alex has to share about how to build value in your business for the long run. And if you're not familiar with Agenda Health, I just want to say that they are one of the very top sell-side M&A firms out there dealing with home care agencies. They have a real expertise. Alex himself has been doing this for a very long time and has incredible relationships in the industry and has so much knowledge to share. And so I feel very, very lucky that you're willing to do that today with us, Alex. So I couldn't be more thrilled about this. Um, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just go through our basic housekeeping stuff. So you've been on a Zoom meeting, presumably recently, but just in case, there's the Q&A button in your Zoom toolbar. Go ahead, use that. We will definitely leave time for questions in this conversation. And in fact, we already have some questions teed up that people asked when they were registering for this event too. So we've got a bunch of stuff that you guys want to know that we're going to cover today. Also, we are recording this, so if you want to send it to somebody afterwards, or if you just want to revisit something, you'll get a copy a couple days later. So it'll be on our website, and we'll email it out. So, just a little bit more of an introduction for Alex. So, Alex is a partner at Agenda Health, where he helps lead the firm's strategic growth, advisor development, and client relationships across the healthcare sector. He's been doing this since 2017, and Alex has executed hundreds of successful transactions and played a key role in building the firm's platform. Alex advises on healthcare transactions and leads the firm's practice evaluation practice, delivering the insights needed to facilitate successful outcomes for business owners. He works very closely with both buyers and sellers, being a pragmatic, execution-focused approach to every engagement. He's got a background in finance and focus on client-centered service. Alex is committed to helping healthcare organizations achieve outcomes that align with their long-term goals. And he lives in Austin, Texas, with his wife and son. And outside of work, he notes that he really enjoys spending time in the outdoors, traveling, and exploring Austin's amazing food scene. So, Alex, thank you so much for being here. I want to go ahead and turn it over to you to share on this very important subject. So, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you do that, okay?
Perfect. All right. Jen, thank you so much for the opportunity and very excited to have this conversation this morning. I'm Alex Veach for everybody and excited to talk through what we've observed in home care M&A over the last 20 years of experience for our firm. Lot of great points there, but let me get my screen shared here and I can walk through what I've got. We are standardly a Google Meets firm, so I gotta
Oh,
figure out how
and
to. I know,
then
boo, boo. I gotta figure out how to drive here.
yeah, yeah, the buttons are always just in like a little bit of a different spot.
All right, here we go. And then, all right, share. Let's see if that works. How do we look there? Okay, good deal.
Yep,
Awesome. Well, just for quick context on agenda for everyone, as Jen said, we are a healthcare services focused M&A advisory firm. So, firm was founded in 2008 by Al Veach, who in case the same last name didn't tip anybody off, is also my dad. And so, Al and I are the two partners here at the firm. I joined in 2017, and in that time, we've built up from a team of four to a team of just over 40. And so we specialize in owner advisory in healthcare services across the country. So started our firm very focused in home health, hospice, and home care, and still a very large aspect of what we do now. And so this is just a quick bio card here. One other thing to note, over $1 billion of transaction value completed in the last 6 years. And then last year, we're honored by Levin as the number one most active advisor in home health and hospice. And so a lot of that was actually home health and home care. And so a lot of experience and excited to share that here on the call this morning. This is just a quick map slide that covers the states that we've had the opportunity to transact in. And so, over 100 home-based care transactions funded here in the last 6 years. 32 states across the country, and then those states that are a slightly altered shade are transactions that we're hoping to close here in the next few months that are under LOI. So wanted to represent those as well. And so wanted to just start with a quick state of the market explanation here. And so you've got a couple points here that I'll cover. On the left-hand side is a little bit more of a macro view. The right-hand side is a little bit more of an agenda-specific angle here. And so I think number one point here is we're seeing a very active marketplace. I think that a lot of headwinds out in space with Medicaid scrutiny and staffing challenges that would have you think it's that's not the case. I think from our own deal activity and that of the space, we've seen home care deal value actually grew almost a fourth from 2024 to 2025. And 2026 has been another great start here with $4.3 billion of capital has already been invested over the course of 2026. And so that's actually up from all of last year. Now there are some larger transactions that are probably artificially inflating that a little bit, but what we're seeing broadly speaking is a very active environment, a very high level of interest, excuse me, from the buyers that we work with into home-based care and into home care specifically. And so what we think is supporting that and really driving that is that stat there, the third one. Almost 1 in 5 Americans is 65 or older, right? And so we've got a ever rising, constantly increasing consumer need for the service. And that's trending to be over 22% by 2034. And so as we continue to age the population, we logically that will only support an ever constant growth in the need for home care services. And so we've seen investors really, acknowledge that and recognize that and invest their capital into that. And so, for us, really started to see that slope up aggressively a few years back over the pandemic, and that interest has been pretty constant since. And so that's how we look at the market. We, as stated on the previous slide, have over 100 transactions completed in the last 6 years. We have 10 active home care transactions that we are in the market now and seeing strong interest on. And so that's where I'll stop on state of the market here. Just a couple buyer. I think that as we talk about the state of the market, one of the questions we get from business owners all the time is, who are your buyers, right? What are those groups? What do they look like? And so, everyone here has certainly seen cold calls from buyers and spoken to a few of those parties, I'm sure. But we split those categories into four separate four separate ones. And so, first is your private equity platforms, right? And so a lot of your strategic home care platforms are private equity backed at this point. And so they've invested into a home care platform and they're looking to make add-on acquisitions for purposes of expanding their footprint and growing into new markets. And so, that's your first. Second is your strategic operators, and so these are groups that already provide home care services, that are looking to expand under their umbrella, maintain their branding, move from one market into another. We do also work with a lot of regional and family-owned buyers, and so these are groups that are maybe, instead of the big names that you've seen and probably heard from, they are parties that still are family-owned businesses that maybe are in a handful of markets and looking to do, instead of 5 to 6 acquisitions a year, they're looking to do maybe one acquisition every now and then as they grow at a slower pace to maintain the brand that they've built. And so fewer of these around now than there were 5 to 6 years back, but certainly still a piece of the buyer pool that we see as having real value, especially for owners that are looking for, for an assurance that their legacy is going to be maintained. And so that's that. And then last one here is family offices and sponsors. And so we're seeing more of these investor groups now than we have been in years previous, where some of these family offices that have historically not been active investors into the healthcare services space in general are starting to really look at it as the population ages, and the kind of nuance here compared to private equity platforms is just a longer hold time from a capital perspective, a more patient investor strategy that tends to lead to just more stability at the platform level for those investments. And so that's how we look at the buyer network.
That's really, really interesting. I think about who's in the market right now. And I mean, the reason I wanted to have you guys here is because you guys are such experts in the industry already. And I know you already have a lot of these relationships in place, which is like really incredible for you guys. And it's so helpful, I think, to see for everybody else to see like generally like the types of buyers that are out there. Because I mean, I think there's like a lot of probably preconceived notions about like the types of companies that will buy a home care agency, but like it's actually quite a wide range of
Right.
organizations, which I think is really interesting. Um, I did have a question from the audience. I don't know, do you want me to keep it till the end or tee it up for you now?
We can tee it up now. Let's
Okay.
do it.
So John was wondering, does it make a difference if our agency is part of a franchise? Is that a plus or a minus for buyers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, we see interest on both sides of that coin, right? I think that there, for the right buyer, or for certain groups, there is a focus on privately held agencies.
Mhm.
And so certainly would say that that's maybe the predominant interest driver in the market, but there is still, on the other side of that, a very active set of investors in the country that are willing to invest in the right franchise-backed opportunities as well. And so I don't think it's all one and none of the other, but is certainly something that, as we work with business owners, the reason I have this slide in here is our focus is, hey, we're not going to show the same group to every deal in the country, right? And so we're going to work with that business owner, understand that business very well, build a buyer pool that is specific and is customized to that deal, to that owner, to the objectives that they have, economically, certainly, but also those things that are less economic as well, so we can make sure we accomplish all goals. And so certainly think there's some interest in the country for certain on the franchise side as well.
That's super helpful. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Just next slide here. Two cards here that kind of contrast what constitutes, smooth deals. We have a running joke here at Agenda that there's no such thing as an easy deal, right? Every deal is hard at some point. Just with the nature of this process and the level of information and capital that's flying around, every deal is challenging at some level. But a couple things here that we think drive good, strong outcomes for home care owners, as opposed to a few things that make things more challenging. And so, on the left card here, I think clean financials is one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about, and here at Agenda is something that will actually help you to do, right? And so we want to work with businesses that have an accounting system that are able to produce reliable income statements and financial output that helps us to understand the business well. And so as we get started with a business owner through our valuation process, that looks like starting with an analysis of those income statements and hey, are these figures that we can count on, right? So we're going to base our value on a lot more than just the financials. That's a common question, but the financials certainly are important. And so that's the first thing there. I think diversified referral sources is another thing. We've worked with business owners where, hey, we're getting 70-80% of our patients from one partner. That from a buyer's perspective is going to look like a very risky opportunity, right? Hey, if I purchase this business and I buy it from these owners, they may get those patients from that partner as a result of the relationship that they have personally with that individual, right? So key man risk is something at various stages of our transaction process that we try to solve for. And so that's an important one. This is something we spend a lot of time talking about: owner independent operations, right? And so we advise owners, hey, there's a really big difference in being very, very good and very talented at what you do as a home care professional and being a good home care agency owner, right? And so the contrast there that we try to draw is we encourage owners to invest in their teams, right? We want to make sure that as we approach valuation, what helps us to maximize that is being able to tell a really good story of, hey, you're investing in more than just one person, right? We've got a team here that is in it for the long haul. Everybody has their own swim lanes and everybody's excellent at what they do. That's where we see our best value, as opposed to superhero owners where, hey, I'm doing the billing, I'm on the marketing side, I'm everything from start to finish for everybody, right? And so while as an entrepreneur that it's a common trap that we want to fall into as we scale our businesses, especially to manage our expenses. But from a value perspective, it presents a challenging story for a buyer to invest into. So we talk a lot about that. Realistic expectations, right? We are, certainly not the only group in the country that specializes in the space, but we have a lot of our own data that supports the valuation trends that we identify here. And so there is, in the world that we live in now, a lot of these investors and buyers, they do their own outbounds, their own prospecting. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But there are a lot of numbers flying around, right? And so this is where we advise owners, hey, for most owners, their home care agency is among, if not the most important economic asset that they have, right? And so, our perspective is you have a fiduciary obligation to understand the value of the business. There's no Zillow.com for what's my home care agency worth, right? And so we aim to meet that. And I think what we try to highlight here on this point is if you engage an accountant that doesn't specialize in this, or a broker or advisor that is a generalist that sells restaurants and car washes and everything else under the sun, you're going to get a feedback loop that may not be actually actionable, right? And so once again, we think we've got a really good set of data here and a really thorough, tenured, experienced team here to be able to set healthy expectations. But whether it's from us or other folks, important that owners have those. So that's that. Last point here is just organized systems and diligence, right? And so over the 10 years of transactions that I've had the opportunity to serve here at Agenda, I've seen every manner of diligence, every manner of information. I've had owners, take pictures of sticky notes and whiteboards and try to pass those off as diligence. And our team is here to fill that gap at a certain level. We want to meet owners where they're at and make that information accessible and actionable for buyers. But what I can say is owners that have their ducks in a row on that side of the fence, those processes are easier and smoother, right? Where you've got systems and processes and the right third parties at the table implemented already, where contracts, employment agreements, what we tell owners as an expectation point is if you put it on paper over the course of your time owning that agency, a buyer's going to ask you for it, right? So easy access into those things with data rooms and other providers is important. So that's the deals that close well side of the fence here. I'm not going to cover everything on the right hand side because some of these things are just the inverse of the thing on the left. But just a couple of things here. I think we encourage owners to really focus on growth, right? And so what I want to highlight there is I think a lot of owners have a thought process of, hey, I need to maximally grow my agency and then I'm going to sell when I can't exercise any more growth. The problem with that is when you're at the top, the only place to go is down, right? And so, and when you're in a transaction process and you're presenting a business, or we are that has that conveys the impression that it's trending in the wrong direction, it has a value impact, right? Nobody wants to buy a business that has no more upside, right? And so we tell owners, hey, we want to make sure we maximize the value of every transaction that we do. And so let's look at those low-hanging fruit opportunities. Let's look at those markets that are ripe for us to enter into, and let's make sure we don't leave any money on the table. But at the other end of that is, hey, we want to make sure that there's a story here that we can sell with the team in place and with the opportunities in the business. Any questions there? I'll pause for a quick second. All right. I'll keep going.
Yeah, no questions yet. So, or
Go.
no other ones.
Just a couple of value drivers I want to highlight. This is just, a continuation of the previous slide. I think growth, as I just mentioned, very important. We are, I think I try to be very simple in how I think of our role as a firm. At the end of the day, we are really storytellers, right? When we are at our best, the value that we add is, hey, this is the business. This is a story of how it was built. This is a story of how it is now, and this is a story of what it can be when you buy it, right? And so growth helps us to tell that story on the backside, and I think every investor that we work with is buying a business not for what it is, but for what it can be, and so that's very important. Payer and client mix. I think we talk a lot about payer mix with owners. I think that we have done transactions in home care across the spectrum of payer mixes. We've done Medicaid only agencies, we've done private pay only agencies, we've done VA only agencies, right? And so, I think that what I advise owners on is it's important that you pick a lane, right? I think that as I said earlier, every buyer pool that we build is specific to each deal, right? And so the good news is for home care owners is there's a buyer pool and investor base for each of those payer sources. And so regardless of where your focus is, it's valuable to the right subset of buyers. But if there is no focus, it makes it hard for us to get that value premium, right? And so I think as you build and scale, your agency, identifying what opportunity is out there in the market from a payer perspective, whether that's private pay or Medicaid or VA or whatever it might be, picking that lane and sticking with it and scaling that aggressively, both will likely allow you to execute on that the best. splitting your focus across a multitude of payer sources is challenging, and also create a value premium for you at exit. So that's something we talk a lot about. Caregiver retention. I'm sure I could hand it over to Jen and she could talk the rest of our time about the importance of this, but it does have a huge M&A impact. At the end of the day, a buyer, they're investing in more than the dollars and figures on the sheet that we build. They're investing into the people, right? They're investing into your staff, into your caregivers, and into the quality of care that they provide that keeps your patients coming back. And so caregiver retention is a big thing we'll talk more about, but it has a meaningful and very impactful M&A, either value add or consequence, right? If that's a strong point or a negative point. So um, referral diversity we talked about, and so management depth we've talked about as well. I think the next thing I'm going to jump into here is those last two cards at the end: systems and data and margin. And so this is a question we get a lot. Hey, are there specific systems that are more transactable than others? What third parties should I be using? What EHR system should I be using? What we tell owners is every agency is different, right? Use what works best for you and for your caregivers. Buyers usually are going to have their own preferences and their own systems, and over time are going to want to move into those after they acquire your agency. And so, but what matters is that you do have organization. That's back to what I said on the previous slide. Having those systems and processes identified and built out and documented is what really drives value. And so that's that. Margins, incredibly important, right? And so I think, while we want to make sure we build great teams, we want to make sure we are keeping our profit margins in the range of acceptability. I think what we look for home care agencies at scale is profit margins of in between 18% on the low end, probably as high as 25 to 26% on the high end. Those are going to fluctuate based on where you're at in the country and the markets that you serve and the expenses there. But that's a good range that you can target as you try to optimize your income statement.
I
Okay,
think
so another common question we get is hey, when do I need to start preparing to sell, right? If I want to sell in 3 years, can I wait until I'm 6 months out? And so we always answer that this way. I'll shameless plug our valuation process here again. It's a free service that we offer, that we encourage owners to update at least every 12 months. Right. So whether you're 5 months out from a sale or 5 years out, that's a good process. It's not just what's the business worth. It's also a consultative exercise on, hey, how do I increase it, and what are my risk points for seeing it decrease, right? And so we don't think there's really a too early point for that exercise, whether it's with us or with another party. And so, but 24 months out is kind of where we advise owners to really start planning. Hey, let's look at the management team. Let's make sure that we've got depth there, that everybody has a clearly understood role and function, and that things are operating the right way. We also will advise owners to think about engaging a third party to get their income statements cleaned up, transition to accrual-based accounting, as that's what your quality of earnings is going to be done on in your sale process. And then lastly, of course, invest in your retention, right? Build a model where when a buyer walks in, the best deals are ones where that problem is solved. And the reason for that is a buyer's biggest risk in any deal is continuity, right? Is the business, after they invest in it, is it going to continue to operate as it did pre-transaction? Caregiver retention is a huge aspect of that. And so where those policies and processes and incentives are already built in, we see a value premium from that. So that's that. 12 months out is where we're advising folks to get a valuation and really start to identify, hey, what's my timeline like, right? 24 months out, things are pretty nebulous. 12 months out, our transaction process is going to take on average about 6 months, right? And so that's where you can start to think, hey, I know where I need to exit, or I know what's driving me to have a timeline that says it's time. 12 months out, I need to start thinking about where am I? What do I need to do to get ready? What value creation opportunities are still there for me, and let's start to identify who I'm going to use as a third party. And so, 6 months out is where we're advising folks, hey, start to assemble your deal team. That's where picking an advisor is very important. Once again, I will stack our service and our experience and resume up against anybody else in our space for this work. But more than signing up with Agenda, I'll encourage folks use a third party, right? We see transactions where a third party M&A advisory firm is not involved. They're going to trade for as much as 20% lower value. Right. And so, again, we think we're pretty special and that we're pretty good at what we do. But ultimately, what matters the most is that you have somebody there that's driving that process for you. This is a life-changing event. You're going to want to hire somebody that does it for a living. Right. And so we tell folks that all the time. Being ready on data and having growth opportunities, on the horizon are those last 2 points highlighted there, right? And so, the transactions that I love the most are ones where we start our conversation with a business owner and they send me a data room link, right? And it's everything under the sun, and it allows me to really learn the opportunity and learn the client that I'm having the opportunity to represent, and that's where I'm my best, right? And so that's helpful.
This is so
Um,
interesting, Alex, and I love it. We did have another question if you
yeah,
want to. So Patty was wondering, because a couple times you referenced caregiver retention. So Patty was wondering about caregiver retention. What's an average retention that's acceptable in the buying process?
Yeah, so that's a good time question. We track median caregiver turnover at about 75%. And that's from Activated Insights. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. You're going to have turnover, right? It's going to happen. I think understanding what the levers are for limiting that is what really matters, and having a story to tell there, right? I think having a policy that a buyer can say, okay, this is something that they're thinking about. These are processes that are in place. Those are the things that matter. And so I think that's a good bar. This slide kind of delves a little deeper in that. And so, as I said, having a retention story, right? What does your process look like for making sure caregivers stay with the agency? What are those incentives, and how do those impact what your retention is, right? Having a recruiting engine, right? And so, Jen, this is where once again, I'm sure I could flip it over to you and let you talk for the rest of the time here. But having a pipeline of applicants, making sure that your caregiver hiring process is not a growth limiter is important. Right. And so what the best way you beat that is planning, and with signing up with a group like Augusta to help you work through that process. And so shameless plug for you there, Jen. But it is very important. So um, along the right hand side here, nearly 4 in 5 caregiver exits happen in the first 100 days. So having a good onboarding process to help you get folks in the right way and make sure they stay, that has a huge impact. And so, and then that last card is most important, and it really aligns with what I hear from a lot of business owners is, hey, I could grow in a near unlimited level if I just had enough caregivers. And so 38.5% of agencies are constantly turning away clients due to staffing alone. And so having the capacity to take on more patients, no brainer here, very, very common sense, is going to allow you to take on more patients, right? And so we encourage owners that have those opportunities in their market, hey, be ready, right? Staff a little bit ahead of where you're at now, so that when you have that next opportunity, you're not working from behind the 8 ball to be ready for that. So we're in a world where, from an M&A perspective, staffing challenges, they face everybody. They face buyers as well, right? And so owners that can bring to the table, hey, I'm staffed ahead of where I am. I'm ready to take on another X number of patients, even if that has a margin downward pressure, we see buyers a lot of the time look favorably upon that because they can, it goes back to that growth story. Hey, I can really look at this opportunity as an opportunity to buy not just where the business is now, but where it's going to be with the capacity that they have. And so it's a really important factor. All right. Well, this is where I'm going to pause, Jen. I think, there's a grab line here at the best or at the top that says the best time to prepare was 3 years ago. The second best time is this quarter, right? So, what we tell everybody is, hey, as I said earlier, this is for everybody that's a home care agency owner. It's very likely a very important economic aspect of your life, right? Having the awareness of what your agency is worth and how you can increase and decrease it is part of your responsibility as an owner. And so that's why we exist as a firm, and we encourage folks to work with great folks like Jen and Augusta to build their agencies far out in advance, so that when they do exit, they're ready, right? And so preparation is crucial, and that's what we're here to talk about. So I will pause there and hand it back over to you, Jen. We can dive into specifics.
Awesome. Hey, that was so helpful. I hope that everybody else uh, got a lot out of that, like I just did. I am going to share my screen because I want
Go for it.
to go over some of the questions that folks had submitted in advance when they registered for this event. So one of these questions may be yours. Um, so and feel free to add more, of course, in the Q&A section if you have them. Also, actually, before I jump into the questions, just one thing, the tie-in with retention and recruiting, I think I thank you so much for sharing everything that you did. I think the thing that I think a lot of people know that recruiting is related to retention, but don't always have maybe the answer to figuring out how they leverage recruiting to actually improve retention. There are like concrete steps that you can take to make your recruiting more aligned with the people that you retain. And that's definitely something that Augusta is helping our customers with. But I'm always happy to talk with folks about it, regardless. So don't hesitate to reach out. But there's a method to recruit for retention. It's not a nebulous thing. There's like concrete things that you can do. So I just want to mention that real quick because um, I feel like it's always kind of a nebulous connection between the two, and there's like dotted lines, but maybe not straight lines, but there really are straight lines between a caregiver asks for 30 hours a week and you only give them 20. They're gonna turn over. You know,
Right.
like there's simple stuff like that that you can change in your business. But I want to stay focused on these questions for now. We can always feel free to reach out to me later if you're ever curious about that. Okay, so then other than gross revenue and net profit, what do buyers look for when considering the purchase of a home care agency? I think we talked a fair bit about that. I don't know if you want to do a little recap or.
Yeah. I'll hit a couple of high points. I mean, obviously, we're talking about caregiver hiring and retention. That's a big one. Quality of your management team is another big one. I think, tenure in your marketplace, right? Establishing a brand that is known in the communities that you serve, and is not a flash in the pan, right? And so those are some things. But for me, it's we categorize value drivers into the financial ones, right? Of which gross revenue and net profit are two. Those things matter, right? What you put on paper is going to be a big driver for how we and others are going to value the business, but the intangibles matter as well. We're selling a story, and we're creating a narrative. We're going to use, even things like the uh, reviews you have online, your Google reviews, your star ratings, your things of that nature, that are going to inform the sort of narrative that we're going to be able to craft on why your business is the right one for that buyer.
Cool. Um, Another question from the audience just came up. Steve was wondering if you do deals in California.
We do, yes. We actually closed a home care transaction in California, I believe, last year. And so
Nice.
we are willing to go from coast to coast. California transactions are, we categorize it as polarizing, right? So you have folks that will not transact in California, and you have folks that only want to transact in California. And so I think that's part of having a true mastery of the buyer world here is being able to build buyer pools for states that are a little bit more unique is how I'll frame it. So
Yeah. And John was actually another question that came in. John was asking about Oregon. Maybe I'll put up that map again on the screen for a second. You do deals in Oregon as well? Is that right?
we do, yes. I don't know that Oregon is going to be highlighted for home-based care on that map, but we've done other transactions in the state.
Okay.
And so yes, we are active. We are active there in other spaces. We actually have a few home health and hospice owners that we're just starting to work with there. Oregon has a very, very meticulous change of ownership process.
Mm.
And so Oregon has created a lot of regulation around that, and so there's a process that has to be followed that basically adds as much as 6 months onto your deal process. But again, I think we certainly have buyers that are strongly interested in the region. It just comes to the opportunity, right? So certainly a place I think we could do some good work in.
Awesome. Okay, now here's the couple questions that I think a lot of people probably showed up to ask, would
Sure.
be my guess. It would, I mean, from what I, talked to people about. So, somebody was wondering about the typical range of sale prices for an agency. What are the multiples, basically, in short?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so multiples is, certainly the question I get asked the most, and it's the hardest one to answer. So I always try to give folks what they're looking for while also making sure we place the right nuance and context around it. In terms of the typical range of sale prices, I think from our perspective, we'll do transactions in the $3 to $5 million deal range, and we closed a transaction earlier this year that had home care that was in the multi nine-figure range, and so hundreds of millions of dollars. And so for us, we want to be home care specialists and experts. We've tried to make sure that we are mission driven more than just size driven in our growth. And so we're not going to turn transactions away that we think we can do a good job for, as long as that's true, right? And so from a size perspective, I think there is a kind of a revenue level where we think, hey, based on our experience, we're not able to create the competitive environment around it that drives the kind of outcomes that we think this business is due. And so we're going to pivot and say, hey, maybe now's not the right time to sell. It's not a deal at all cost for us. It's hey, let's look at how we can introduce you into the right third parties to help you grow the business in preparation of a sale. And so those are the conversations that we have on that front. That's size. I think from a multiple perspective, multiples are most commonly assessed on your adjusted EBITDA. And so EBITDA is an acronym that is really essentially your adjusted earnings in the business. So, think about, for simplicity's sake, your net income plus your adjustments, right? So those can be owner compensation, they can be non-recurring expenses, we'll do pro forma EBITDA adjustments for rate increases where those are present. And so it is the profitability of your business per the income statement, plus the things where if we can look at it and say, A, if this business is transacted, that expense won't exist, or B, that expense is not a normal operating expense that would occur in a standard 12 months. Hey, we had to replace an AC unit, we had to, had a flood and had to rip out the flooring in an office, those sorts of things, right? So that's what your multiple is placed upon. I think that what we look at, and it does fluctuate some by payer source, so I could burn up the rest of the time walking through each payer source and size. But from a conceptual perspective, I'll say As your EBITDA grows larger, as your agency is larger and more profitable, your multiple appreciates as well, right? And so the concept that we always draw as a comp is if you look at a diamond, the value of a diamond that's 2 carats is going to be more than the value of two 1 carat diamonds, right? Because that's 2 carat stone is more rare, it's more scarce in the market, right? And so same concept applies for multiples on home care agencies. As we see the agency grow larger, it becomes more scarce and it's due a larger multiple as a result. So, I think broadly speaking, we've transacted home care opportunities, as low as I would say around 4 to 5x of that adjusted EBITDA figure. That's where we'd expect opportunities land where, hey, we're one location, maybe we're, in that $2 to $4 million revenue range. That's usually going to be, around 400 to $500,000 of EBITDA. And so that's kind of how we think about the lower end. As agencies grow, of course, those multiples increase. And so, we've seen multiples rise as high as, I'll call it, that 9 to 11x. Range for truly scaled, multi-state, multi-market, right team, right growth, all the boxes checked. That's kind of how we see that spectrum. And so that's how we think about multiples. I'll pause there, Jen, see if you think I hit that well enough.
I think that was an excellent answer, personally. But any questions from the audience? Feel free to chime in if you have anything else. Um, so it looks like we do have a question that just came in. Uh, Let me read this for a second. It's a little bit on the longer side here. Interesting. So, and this may be somebody that you actually want to connect with outside of this. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who probably want to connect after this, but Rockelin, I hope I pronounced her name right. She's saying that she is both the co-owner of a home health agency and she's also a business advisor or broker related to home care transactions. And she was curious about whether or not you've worked on any deals there in Pennsylvania, and if you have thoughts about the home care side of the market there.
Yeah, so we have opportunities in the state right now that we're working on. I think Pennsylvania has been an interesting market. I think we do certainly see interest in the market broadly. I think that probably a little bit stronger interest on the, I'm trying to remember the geography here, Harrisburg side of the state as opposed to the Philadelphia side of the state. And so I think just with the competition in that eastern half of the state, we certainly see a lot of buyer interest in the western half of the state. But I think, across the state, certainly some buyer interest. I think the challenging thing there for buyers is there hasn't been a rate increase in a while, right? And so I think there's been, I think we're 2 or 3 years in now where, hey, this is going to be our year we get our rate increase and we're not seeing it. And now we're in a place where there's incredible Medicaid scrutiny at the federal level that now has owners questioning, hey, is this going to come, right? So I think your rates there are due for an increase, and just with the timing of the administration currently in place, there's some doubt as to whether that's going to happen. And so I do think there's a little bit of buyer wait and see happening there. But I do think it's still a market that we find folks have some interest in. It's just, hey, let's find the right deal and make sure we're paying a multiple that accounts for some of the instability. So that's how I'd answer that.
Well, thank you. And I know we're pretty much at time here, although I have to admit, so I think we, in terms of the other audience questions, we definitely talked about how to prepare or like when to prepare for sale. I actually, honestly, I'm not sure what these acronyms are. So maybe GP
Yeah.
percent or NOP. Um,
Yeah, so gross profit is what I'm
oh,
assuming
gross.
that first one is, and I'm assuming net operating
Uh,
percentages or net operating profit, excuse me, is that second one. And so net operating profit is net income. That's kind of, those terms are equivalent. And so gross profit is your revenue less your caregiver wages. And so that's kind of your starting point for you to get to net operating income, right? And so, in terms of which one is more important, I think they obviously go hand in hand. They're part of the same math problem. You need gross profit to get to net operating income, and so where we see a lack of net operating income, it usually comes back to gross profit, right? Are we overpaying for caregivers? Are we overstaffed for the census that we're able to serve, right? And so I don't know that I'm able to pick which one matters more or less. I think you're definitely going to hear a lot more headline talk about the latter, in terms of what you're placing a multiple on, but your gross profit informs your net operating profit. And so, I think good management on both sides of the equation. Are we paying caregivers market wages? Are we staffed the right way? That's your gross profit questions. Your net operating income is, as a starting point, the same questions, and then added on, hey, are we managing operating expenses, fixed costs, the right way as well? So I think they're both very relevant.
Mm, yeah, thank you. And just out of curiosity, the last question on here, do you have any opinions or suggestions on what departments to outsource the most and the least?
Yeah, I
And
mean, I have to say staffing, right? No, I think the staffing, hiring, and onboarding process is one we see commonly outsourced. I think I advise business owners to think about, in the normal course of a transaction, most of the transactions that we see and observe and participate in the country are going to be to a home care agency, right? Whether it's private equity backed or a public group or a family office group or whatever that might be. There's most of the time a home care operating platform on the other side of the fence. So I advise owners, hey, think about what services they're likely to have in house, right? And so those services a lot of the time are good to think about outsourcing because a buyer is going to want to operate in their mold, right? Most cases, they're not operating each individual acquisition the way that agency is run previous. They're over time. It's not an overnight thing, but transitioning to their operating model. And so, I think the recruiting and onboarding process is a common one. I think your financial management is another common one. There are a lot of providers that do some great work on the billing side, right? And your accounting, right? I think that having a full-time resource, obviously some of this is inflective on what size agency it is, right? But I think that's a service where, hey, you want to make sure it's done the right way, and so sometimes a third party is the best way to go for that. But B, it's also a common function that a buyer is going to have at the corporate level as well. So.
Mhm. Yeah, that's helpful. Um, okay, so we're pretty much at time here. And so, Alex, if folks want to get in touch, how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, I we'll send an email out to the attendee lists following the call, just so everybody has our information. But you can also go to agendahealth.com, and you'll find a lot of information there. First of all, there's content and insights in there, but you'll also find ways to, if you want to get evaluation, opportunity to express interest in that. If you want to acquire another agency, we're happy to talk about that with you as well. And so, website's the best place to start. But for me personally, if you want to shoot me a LinkedIn um, uh,
No.
DM, happy to. I'm not sure what term they use for that. I guess I should have said message, but shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to connect personally as well if there are any questions I can answer for any of the Augusta clients here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. It was really just a pleasure. I feel like I learned something. I hope everybody in the audience got something out of this today too. And of course, if you're not already a client of Augusta, I would love to talk with you as well. So there's our contact information and Alex's website, and we will follow up with an email and make sure you guys have access to them after this.
Perfect.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody. And I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon. And again, thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
for sure. Take care.